How toxic are you? Something shifted in human civilization thousands of years ago, and we have not fully acknowledged it. There was a time, documented in archaeology, in art, in the earliest religious artifacts we've ever found, when the feminine and the masculine were understood as equal, complementary, and sacred. Both necessary, both honored, both woven into how communities organized themselves, how they worshipped, how they understood power, creation, and what it meant to be truly human. And then something changed. The balance tipped. And the world we inherited, with all of its division, its rigidity, its toxic expressions of both masculinity and femininity, is at least partially a consequence of that tipping. In this episode of Beyond Horizyns, we're going deep into one of the most important conversations of our time. And it is not from a political angle or a gender war angle, but from a historical, spiritual, psychological, and deeply human angle. Because I believe this conversation is too important to be left to the loudest and most toxic voices on the internet that are a perfect example of what we're talking about today.
Where the body finds its balance and the soul feels complete. Every story, every journey, every healing step we take, we're living life with purpose, with every breath we make. Beyond horizons, we rise.
Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Horizyns, understanding the divine masculine, feminine, and its toxic counterparts. The oldest religious figurines ever discovered are feminine. The Venus of Willendorf dated to approximately 28,000 BCE. The Venus of Hohle Fels dated to at least 35,000 years ago, currently one of the oldest known examples of figurative art in human history. These weren't decorative objects. Archaeological consensus suggests they were very sacred, representing fertility, creation, and life force, the generative power of existence itself, understood as feminine. In Turkey, one of the oldest known human settlements occupied from approximately 7,500 to 5,700 BCE, shows compelling evidence of a society organized around goddess veneration. Archaeologist Marija Gimbutas spent decades documenting what she called Old Europe, a network of pre-Indo-European cultures across Eastern and Central Europe that appeared to be relatively egalitarian, goddess-centered, and notably peaceful, with far fewer weapons and fortifications than the cultures that followed. Ancient Sumer revered Inanna, the queen of heaven and earth, as one of the most powerful deities in the pantheon. Ancient Egypt held Isis, Hathor, and Ma'at as central divine figures. Ma'at, the goddess of truth, justice, and cosmic order, was the principle by which all of existence was measured. In ancient India, Shakti was understood not as subordinate to masculine divinity, but as the very force that animates it. Without Shakti, Shiva cannot move. These were the organizing cosmologies of entire civilizations. So, what changed? Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to tell you about something that's been in the works. Something I genuinely believe is going to change the way people in the holistic, spiritual, and wellness space find each other, support each other, and grow together. It's called Horizyns. Horizyns is a platform our team has been building for creators, practitioners, healers, teachers, and seekers like you. An all-in-one space where you can discover amazing holistic and wellness vendors, take workshops and classes, find meaningful products, connect with a real community, and build something of your own if you're a creator in this space. Think of it as a conscious, curated ecosystem, part marketplace, part learning platform, part community hub, built with intention for people who want more than just an algorithm. Horizyns is launching in 2026, and right now, you can get ahead of it. Head over to www.horizynsinc.com. That's HORIZYNSINC.com to learn more or schedule a personal demo of the platform. I would love to walk you through what we're building and show you how it could serve you, whether you're a seeker, a creator, or both. The link is in the show notes. Go take a look. I think you're going to love what's coming. Scholars, including Rian Eisler, author of The Chalice and the Blade, and historian Gerda Lerner in The Creation of the Patriarchy, have documented a significant cultural shift beginning roughly 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, coinciding with the rise of pastoral, nomadic, and later militaristic cultures that gradually displaced or conquered the older goddess-centered societies. The Indo-European migration brought patrilineal social structures and pantheons increasingly dominated by sky gods and warrior deities. The gradual codification of major world religions, while deeply meaningful in many ways, also systemically diminished or demonized feminine divine imagery. By the time of ancient Greece, whose philosophical legacy still shapes Western thought, we see Aristotle writing that the female is a deformity in the natural order, a passive vessel for the active male principle. This became the intellectual architecture for laws, medicine, theology, and social organization for centuries. Gerda Lerner's research traces how the control of women's reproductive capacity became central to the organization of early patriarchal states, because lineage, inheritance, and property required certainty of paternity. The subordination of the feminine wasn't incidental to early civilization building. In many cases, it was structural to it. That is a documented historical reality, and its consequences are still very much with us. Carl Jung proposed that every human psyche contains both masculine and feminine principles, regardless of biological sex or gender identity. He called the feminine principle within a man the anima, and the masculine principle with a woman the animus. And he argued that psychological wholeness, what he called individuation, requires integrating both sides. A man who has no access to his anima is cut off from intuition, relational depth, emotional intelligence, and creative receptivity. A woman who has no access to her animus is cut off from direct will, assertive action, clarity of thought, and healthy boundaries. Jung's insight, later expanded by scholars like James Hollis, Marion Woodman, and Robert Moore, is that the imbalance we see in the outer world is a reflection of an imbalance in the inner world. Toxic masculinity is not too much masculine energy. It is masculine energy disconnected from its feminine counterpart, untempered by empathy, wisdom, relational awareness, and emotional depth. Toxic femininity is not too much feminine energy. It is feminine energy cut off from the healthy masculine structure, boundaries, and self-directed will. And toxic positivity. Let's really sit with this one for a moment, because this one is sneaky. This is what happens when spiritual language gets weaponized against the very growth it claims to support. When the good vibes only stops being an intention and becomes an excuse to avoid accountability, an excuse to deny suffering, your own and everyone else's, and an excuse to stay comfortable while calling it enlightenment. Think about how many people you know who say things like, "I only allow positive energy in my space," and what that actually looks like in practice. It looks like cutting off a friend who's going through the hardest season of their life. It looks like disappearing on someone the moment they stop being easy to be around. It looks like deciding that another person's pain is an inconvenience to your peace, and dressing that decision up in the language of boundaries and self-protection. That, my friends, is not spiritual growth. That's spiritual avoidance wearing a wellness costume. And here's what makes it genuinely dangerous. Not just uncomfortable, but dangerous. Every time we use positivity as a shield against someone else's suffering, we exercise a muscle, and that muscle is the slow, quiet, deliberate suppression of empathy. Do it enough times, and you don't just avoid hard conversations, you lose the capacity for them. You become someone who has optimized so hard for comfort that you can no longer tolerate the full reality of being human, yours or anyone else's. That is not a higher vibration. That is living a smaller life. Neuroscientist Ian McGilchrist's landmark work, The Master and His Emissary, presents extensive evidence that the left and right hemisphere of the brain engage with the world in fundamentally different modes. The left hemisphere tends toward focused, analytical, categorizing attention, the kind of thinking that breaks the world into parts. The right hemisphere tends toward broad, relational, contextual awareness, the kind that holds the whole picture together. And McGilchrist argues that modern Western culture has become dangerously over-reliant on left hemisphere thinking, at the cost of connective, empathic awareness the right hemisphere provides. McGilchrist's argument is that Western civilization has become dangerously left hemisphere dominant, that we have prioritized the analytical, controlling, categorizing mode to the point where we've lost access to the relational, contextual, meaning-making mode, and that this imbalance is showing up in our politics, our institutions, our relationship with the natural world, and our own mental health crisis. Additionally, research in social psychology, including work by Alice Igley on social role theory, consistently shows that what we call masculine and feminine traits are far more culturally constructed and contextually variable than biological determinism would suggest. These are not fixed biological destinies. They are patterns of being that can be cultivated. The divine masculine, in its healthy integrated expression, is not dominance. It is not suppression of emotion. Healthy divine masculine energy is protective without being controlling, decisive without being rigid, disciplined without being punishing. It holds boundaries from a place of love, not fear. Toxic masculinity always comes from a weakness surrounded by fear. The divine feminine, in its healthy integrated expression, is not passivity. It is not endless self-sacrifice. Healthy divine feminine energy is deeply intuitive and deeply discerning. It receives and creates. It holds space without losing itself. It nurtures from abundance, not depletion. It speaks truth with compassion rather than silence with resentment. Toxic femininity always comes from a place of passivity to the dominance of toxic masculinity and fear. Every human being carries both divine masculine and feminine energies, whether they want to admit it or not. Every community needs both. Every institution that is healthy will embody both. The goal is not for men to become more feminine or women to become more masculine in any superficial sense. The goal is for every person, regardless of gender, to develop access to the full spectrum of their humanity, to be both strong and tender, both structured and fluid, both decisive and receptive, both boundaried and open. Now let's discuss an actual framework. Start with honest self-inventory. Ask yourself, not judgmentally, but with genuine curiosity, where in your life are you over-relying on one principle at the expense of the other? Are you all action and no reflection, all feeling and no boundary, all structure and no flow? The imbalance usually isn't subtle once you're willing to look at it. Engage the body. Research in somatic psychology, including the work of Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk, consistently shows that our deepest patterns live in the body, not just the mind. Movement, breathwork, yoga, dance, martial arts, and, of course, my favorite, a tea ritual. These are primary access points for integration work. Examine your relationships as mirrors. The divine masculine and feminine in you are often most visible in how you relate to others. Where do you overgive? Where do you withhold? Where do you overpower? Where do you collapse? These patterns are all data. Engage the traditions honestly. Taoism's yin and yang, Hindu Shakti and Shiva, indigenous two-spirit traditions, alchemical symbolism in Western mysticism. There is a vast, rich human library of wisdom about this balance. Engage with respect, with context, and with your own discernment. Are you dismissing others because of toxic positivity? If so, take an inventory of yourself. And do the inner work consistently. Individuation is not an event. It is a lifelong practice of becoming more fully yourself. The communities we build, the world we build, will only be as integrated as the individuals within it. Before we wrap things up, Tea for Peace Tranquility Lounge is an invitation to pause, breathe, and reconnect. Crafted by tea alchemist, myself, CJ Sugita Jackson, Tea for Peace will offer premium loose-leaf teas, functional herbal botanicals, beverage ritual training, and alcohol-free elixir recipes designed to bring balance to your body and calm to your mind. Whether you're starting your morning with intention or winding down in the evening, Tea for Peace transforms simple moments into meaningful rituals. Through tea, make friends. Discover your ritual today at teaforpeace.org. We are living in a moment of profound masculine and feminine confusion. Men are being told that strength is violence and that vulnerability is weakness. Both lies. Women are being told that ambition requires the abandonment of tenderness. Also a lie. And everyone is being sold a version of spiritual wellness that skips the hard parts and delivers comfort instead of transformation. The answer to all of this is integration. The hard, ongoing, deeply personal, and deeply communal work of becoming whole. Whole people build whole communities. Whole communities build a different kind of world. That's not a utopian fantasy. That's a direction worth moving in together. Join me next week on Beyond Horizyns as we look at dreams, symbols, and the language of the subconscious. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow the Beyond Horizyns podcast wherever you're listening right now, so you never miss a future conversation. And I want to invite you to join our Horizyns community at www.horizynsinc.com. That's HORIZYNSINC.com, where you can meet like-minded individuals, discover amazing products, and take workshops from our many curated vendors. Each week on this show, we'll keep exploring new ideas, traditions, and perspectives, things that can genuinely help us live more balanced, more meaningful, more intentional lives. Thank you for being here at the beginning of the journey. It means more than you know. And until next time, keep exploring what lies beyond the horizon.
Beyond her.